What's a scene with good visual information? Now I bitch a lot about how things are shown, how they're told, and how they're structured. Some people don't like that. That's fair. In one video I talk about how camera angles can be used to portray relationships in conflict. In another video I talk about how punctures and story progression can change how we expect the macro structure of a story to go. But a lot of it, perhaps unfairly, perhaps fairly, is highly critical. So let's give some context, let's provide some context. What's a scene that I think is good, well done, has great visual information? Well, it's actually not that far off. It's a fairly recent anime named Kyousougiga by Izumi Todo, directed by Rie Matsumoto. Now the specific scene I'm speaking of is the introduction of the family. It's only 5 minutes and 30 seconds, and the amount of information that it has is equivalent to almost an episode or two's worth. It's diegetic, energetic, and dense, and it tells us a lot about the characters, allowing us to propel the story without needing to establish their backstories. So, are you guys ready? Okay, let's go. At 2:21, it pans from the town to the temple, suggesting isolation. The still dog suggests longing for company, but the movement of the butterfly, relevant to the stillness of the shot, implies he wants something a bit more cogent, sapient. At 2:35, we see the extent of his abilities here, setting up the suspension of disbelief and the rules necessary for every other element in the story to work. The dragon is a drawing that's gone when ripped, showing his power. Based on how the boys are leaning, they've come from the wooden gate, where the old man quickly walks past. This is an act of superstition, implying ignorance. Now let's get to Kodo. See, at 3:44, Kodo's introduction is a match cut from the drawing that we saw established earlier by the dragon. She comes from off-screen, implying an intrusion, but the natural framing of the temple's pillars create a visual barrier between the two. Myo and the dog share the stage, but Kodo does not. At 4:12, we get the heart. Dog and Kodo facing Myo center the viewer's eye towards him, so the target of Kodo's affection is obvious. Now we shift to the Bodhisattva at 4:20, who's in the same stage as Myo and the dog. Notice how the bars shift, but Kodo remains separated. At 4:45, this is a little bit of an aside, but Kyousougiga incorporates height to establish hierarchy a lot in this show. I may talk about this in a later video, but when the characters are framed, they're usually situated on a higher level than those they're advising. Now the Bodhisattva has lent Kodo her body for the sake of Kodo's affection, and in the process of doing so, it switches perspectives from outside the temple to within the temple. The pillars of the temple no longer frame clearly lineated stages that separate the characters, but one stage that implies a larger, wider, holistic setting. At 5:40, with ease and confidence, Kodo strides across the stage, and here we see height used to establish the relationship. She starts off taller than Myo because she takes charge, but then bends down to be lower than him, meaning that the power has shifted from her to him. When she pushes forward, he falls a bit lower because she essentially overpowers him. In a lot of other shows, this dynamic is shown as a seiza, but the two of them never bow, because they never need to. At 6:05, it cuts to the blossoming flower, suggesting a romance. At 6:13, it cuts to what's possibly the most impressive montage this episode. See, each cut forms a highly symmetrical series of scenes that keeps your eye moving from one spot to another. The first shot shows equal distance between the two of them, then cuts to a shot with little distance, then a wide distance, then just Myo on the right side, then Kodo on the left side, and then mirror the initial shot, but this time with less distance. So not only do the seasons in the background portray an effective passage of time, but the tug of war in the characters' positions revealing the tug of war of their relationship, implying a blossoming symbiotic affection. At 6:23, we get as possibly one of the more clever incorporations of visual imagery. See, in Japan, the pomegranate turned the Indian demon Hariti into a bodhisattva, thereby becoming a fruit that symbolized the protection of children against death. So not only does it protect children from death, but it's well regarded by mothers for fertility. The L cut that leads to Yakishimaru's name being called says that he's the one the pomegranate represents. So it's a dualistic meaning. On one hand, it ties Yakishimaru's life to the fixation with death, but at the same time it starkly contrasts Kodo's calling, suggesting her inability to give life. From there, it shows the others, and the transition of seasons show time. It's a highly economical approach to introducing all of the characters, their settings, and their quirks, and it establishes the visual language the show employs. It also tells us the mythos it borrows, and how it sets up a lot of its in-universe mythology. And when we see a lot of these tricks get used in the following episodes, we get a better idea of what they're going for, and how one scene leads to another. And most importantly, it shows us that it can tell a story with a beginning, middle, and an end with very few words. If you've never seen the scene or this anime, you can probably figure out what's going on entirely without the use of audio or subtitles. It has very few words already, and what words it already uses are primarily to augment its storytelling. Shows have the luxury of defining their own visual language right at the beginning. Employing what you think are appropriate techniques to tell a tale gives us a better idea of what to look forward to, as well as lets you provide information in ways that don't need to be spoken or told. And when you're strapped for time or budget, being economical or clever with your visuals and symbols allows you to organically introduce, foreshadow, and define important elements without needing to spend more time or money than necessary. So, give it a shot. Try it. Watch it without the subtitles. Try it without the audio. And see if you can figure out its beginning, middle, and end. I can almost guarantee you can, because a skillfully constructed story is oftentimes an easily understood one.